Assalamu alaikum. Dear students of second year honors, Department of English, Anand Mohan College, this class is for you, and this class is especially for the students of those students who are newly promoted to second year honors from first year honors. So, dear students, I hope all of you are fine and you are doing well at home. So, dear students, I think previously I had already taken a class with you, and this is my second online class with you. So, as you have already been promoted to second year honors, so I hope you are already been acquainted with your second year honors syllabus, and you are doing good with the syllabus of second year honors, and it is also expected that you are regular in your studies. So, dear students, in the previous class, I discussed on English Romanticism. That is from history of English literature. I discussed some of the major issues that were included in your romantic case, in English romantic case, and I told you that as you are the student of English literature, so history of English literature, it is a very important topic for you, and you have a complete paper that is English romantic poetry. That's why history is very much important, or romantic age is related to the romantic poetry. That's why previously I mentioned some of the features from English romanticism. And today I have selected a topic from your romantic poetry. And my today's topic for this today's discussion is The Rime of the Ancient Mariner. You know, a very famous poem, a very interesting poem by Samuel Taylor Coleridge. And I think you have already known the name of Samuel Taylor Coleridge, that is also known as S.T. Coleridge. And it can also possible that many of you have already read the poem by S.T. Coleridge, that is The Rime of the Ancient Mariner. So today I want to discuss some important issues, some important features, necessary features from this poem by Samuel Taylor Coleridge. And you already know that Samuel Coleridge, he is a very much prominent poet of English Romantic age, because he is considered as the pioneer of English Romanticism, along with his literary collaborator, that is William Wordsworth. And these two collaborators, that is William Wordsworth and Samuel Taylor Coleridge, they are considered as the pioneer of Romanticism. And they combinedly officially started English Romantic age through the publication of their book Lyrical Ballads, the Lyrical Ballads. So The Rime of the Ancient Mariner is a famous poem by Samuel Taylor Coleridge, and when these two poets, that is William Wordsworth and Samuel Taylor Coleridge, they were the literary collaborators. They had an agreement between them. That is, Coleridge, he agreed that he will deal with supernatural elements, the supernatural themes, and ultimately he will present the supernatural things or supernatural elements in a natural way. That means he will treat the supernatural elements in a natural way. Or you can also say that he ultimately naturalized the supernatural issues, the supernatural things, or the supernatural description. On the other hand, William Wordsworth, he agreed that he will basically deal with the natural objects, the natural things, as he is the great lover of nature, he is the poet of nature. That's why his focal point of writing poetry was nature. So obviously he will deal with nature, and ultimately he agreed that ultimately he will supernaturalize the natural events. That means through his description, we notice the point that finally he spiritualized the natural objects, the natural things. So the treatment of these poets, you can say that these are the vice versa. That means their treatment was quite different to each other, just opposite to each other. While Coleridge deals with supernatural incidents, supernatural themes, and ultimately he gives a natural description or natural treatment of those supernatural things. On the other hand, William Wordsworth, he basically deals with the natural things and finally he supernaturalizes or spiritualizes those basic natural things. And in case of Samuel Taylor Coleridge, there is a very popular statement that William's willing suspension of disbelief. In the books that are written on Samuel Taylor Coleridge, you can frequently find this statement that is called willing suspension of disbelief. This term is used in case of the writing of Samuel Taylor Coleridge. It means that Samuel Taylor Coleridge, he loves to deal with the supernatural things, supernatural elements, supernatural events, but he treats those things in a very natural way. For that reason, it usually happens that the readers are very much willing to suspend their disbelief on those supernatural things for the time being. It is very common that the readers, they are well aware about the fact that the things that they are reading through the writing of Samuel Taylor Coleridge, these are not the natural things, rather these are the supernatural things. So this really does not exist. These never exist in reality. These are the fantasy. These are the supernatural things. So the readers are well aware about this fact. Even then, the readers, they are willing to suspend their disbelief for the time being when they are going through the description. For the time being, they suspend their disbelief and they try to keep their faith or keep their belief on those description to get the pleasure from the narration of St. Coleridge. For that reason, this term is used in the writing of Samuel Taylor Coleridge, that is called the willing suspension of disbelief. So when we will come to discuss this point, that is the present topic, The Rime of the Ancient Mariner, a long narrative poem of Samuel Taylor Coleridge. So at first we want to know about the type of the writing. What type of writing is it? Because you are the students of English literature. So different genre of literature, for example, poetry, that means poems, dramas, short stories, fictions, then prose, then novel, different types of literary writing will be there in your course. So before going to start a particular topic, we must have a clear idea about the type of the writing. What type of writing is it? So our present topic, The Rime of the Ancient Mariner, this is a poem. Basically, this is a poem. It is very common to know that it is a poem. But there is a certain kind of this poem that is called ballad. This poem is called a ballad. Basically, a ballad is a long narrative poem, and you know this is an elaborate poem, an extended poem, a long elaborate poem. This poem carries more than 600 lines, maybe 625 lines are there altogether in this poem. So it is obvious that this is a long poem and the poem is written in a narrative style. So it is called that this poem is a long narrative poem. So this type of long narrative poems are termed as ballad. That's why this poem is called a ballad. At the same time, it is also called an allegorical poem. So what is an allegory? You know, an allegorical writing is that type of writing or that writing where there are twofold meaning. That means apparently you will get a certain meaning in an allegory, but there is obviously an underlying meaning. Underlying meaning will obviously there in an allegorical writing. So this poem, that is The Rime of the Ancient Mariner, this is also considered as an allegorical poem because in this poem we also get two meaning. That is, when we will go through the poem, apparently we will get a certain theme, a certain discussion, a certain meaning of this poem. But obviously there is a hidden meaning, there is a hidden lesson, there is a hidden story in this poem. That's why it is considered as an allegorical poem. So it is very much clear that this poem is a ballad. That means it is a long narrative poem. At the same time, it is also considered as an allegorical poem because under the guise of the apparent meaning of this poem, there is a hidden and much significant meaning that lies in this poem. Now, we can discuss about the twofold meaning of this poem. That is, this poem has also twofold interest. That is, when this poem is also enjoyable for the immature children, at the same time this poem can also be meaningful and enjoyable for the adults. You know, it is a supernatural poem. That is, the facts that are described in this poem, that are presented in this poem, these are supernatural events, these are supernatural things, and we know that this can never happen in reality. So this is a fantastic story. So fantasy based story is described or narrated in this poem. So the immature children, they can get easily get enjoyment through this poem, as it can be considered as a thrilling fantasy. Because you know, when we will proceed through this poem, we will find that there is a phantom ship, that is a ghostly ship is there. There are two ghostly characters on that ship. Some supernatural things happened, and all these things are the supernatural or the thrilling fantasy. So this can be enjoyed. All these things are easily be enjoyed by the kids and the immature readers. But at the same time, this poem is also very much meaningful and very much significant, and at the same time enjoyable for the adults when they will find out the hidden meaning, underlying meaning of this poem through the moral lesson. When the adult people will go through the lines and will try to find out the inner meaning of this poem, then they will also be amazed and they will also enjoy this poem. So this poem is interesting both for the kids as well as for the adults. Now, the basic points about this poem is that as it is a very long narrative poem, so this poem is divided into several parts. So 7 parts are there, that is, the long poem is divided into 7 parts, and each of the parts of this poem is ended through a twist. That means S.T. Coleridge, he intentionally gives or intentionally presents a twist just at the ending portion, just at the ending point of each of the parts. And this twist instantly arises an acute interest among the readers to know what comes next. That is, the readers are very much curious. Because of this twist, the readers becomes very much curious. They feel an acute interest to know what is coming next, what is going to happen next. So you can also say that this is the skillful mastery of the poet to attract the attention of the readers to continue the long poem up to its ending portion. That is, up to the finishing point, the reader will be spellbound to know or to read the poem minutely, to know what is going to happen next. And this is the skillful mastery of the poet S.T. Coleridge. So we can now come to the discussion of the poem. So the story of the poem, as you know that it is a long poem, so the story is also a very elaborate one. So basically when we were in the usual class, we did not complete the poem within a single class. We usually took 4 or 5 classes, or at least 3 classes to complete the whole poem. And it would be much more it became much more convenient for the student to get a clear idea about the complete poem. So through this type of online class we cannot make the continuation, because after completing a class uh, there is a long gap to get the next class with the same class with the same year. So the continuation is not possible through this type of online classes. That's why within a single class we try to complete a single topic. That's why it will not a complete discussion of this poem, of this long poem. Rather, I will try to give you an overview of the poem, an outline of the poem. So we will just try to make a very precise summary of the poem that is discussed in this long poem of 625 lines. So at the very beginning of this poem, we see that before the starting of this poem, I want to give you some idea about the title of this poem, that is the Rime of the Ancient Mariner. You know the word, the very word rhyme, R-I-M-E, rhyme. It is usually not familiar with you, because this is not a commonly used words in the present days. Rather, it is an archaic word, and it is used here. So the real word that are usually used in the contemporary situation, it is rhyme, rhyme, that means verse. So the rhyme of the ancient mariner, basically it means the verse of the ancient mariner, or you can say that the poem of the ancient mariner, or we can also commonly or plainly say that the rhyme of the ancient mariner means the story of the ancient mariner, the verse of the ancient mariner. The story of the ancient mariner is described here in the form of a verse. So, the very title of this poem gives us a clear idea that obviously this poem will tell us something about the experience, the previous story of the life of this old mariner. Ancient means old. So, a particular old mariner, that means a sailor. Mariner means a sailor. So, a particular old sailor is here mentioned here, and a story, a significant story of his life will be described in this poem. So, the poem opens in such a situation where there is a marriage ceremony, and just to join that marriage ceremony, 3 guests were going to join the marriage ceremony. On the way, just by the side of the way, there was a tree, and under that tree, an old man was sitting, and that particular old man is the ancient mariner. That means the old mariner. So the old mariner was sitting under a tree just by the side of the way. That way was going towards the marriage ceremony, marriage hall. So 3 marriage guests were going to join that marriage ceremony, and suddenly the ancient mariner kept hold of one of the marriage guests' hand. And usually it happens, we in such a situation it happens that the guest who was going to join the marriage ceremony, he was annoyed and he feels disturbed, because on the way someone has stopped him. So he looks at the person who has kept hold of his hand, and he saw that an old man has stopped him. So at first he was not giving much importance to that man, rather he was annoyed with that person. But when he looks at the eyes of that mariner, that old man, he was surprised, or he felt that there was something strange on the eyes of that mariner. The glittering eyes of the mariner was something different. There was something different, or something peculiar that drew the attention of this marriage guest, and he couldn't uh, ignore him. He couldn't, what should I say? he couldn't ignoring him, he couldn't go on his own way. Rather, he stopped there and he wanted to listen to what the man is going to tell him. So the ancient mariner, without making any introduction, without giving any background, he he starts his story abruptly. He just started the story without any beginning, without any background. He just started to tell there was a sheep. So this abrupt beginning was also very much stunning to attract the attention of that marriage guest. So it happens that the marriage guest could not leave him, and he was bound to listen to the ancient mariner's story. So, from then onward, the ancient mariner started to tell his story to this marriage guest. And in this way, through the narration of this ancient mariner, we will come to know about the whole story of the ancient mariner. And here, the marriage guest is the listener. And in some few points, we will feel the presence of the marriage guest, because in some portion there will be some interruption of the marriage guest. He will reply or he will say something, but in a very minor points there is the reaction of the marriage guest. So the story starts in the way that the ancient mariner, he um, told the marriage guest about his last journey on the sea, and that was the experience of his last journey on the sea. So he started telling his story, and he told the marriage guest that uh, he was going to sail for the South Sea, and along with him there were 200 sailors. So in total, there were on the ship, in total there were 201 sailors. The ancient mariner, he told the marriage guest that in his ship there were 200 sailors, and they were preparing for sailing for the South Sea. And in a very congenial weather, they started their journey. And at the very beginning, their journey was a very smooth one. Very smoothly, their ship was proceeding forward, and they all of them were in a very hilarious mood. Suddenly, they noticed an albatross came to their ship. So, an albatross is a big seabird. You know, a short note on an albatross is a very common question for you. So, yeah, I request you to get preparation on the short note of an albatross. So here, albatross is a big seabird. So here, the ancient mariner and also the other mariners, they noticed that on their ship an albatross came. So at first they considered this albatross as a very as a holy guest for them, because they were in a very silent sea. After starting their journey, when they proceed a long way, so they reached in such a place where there is no locality. This is the remotest place, and they have come far away from the locality. So in this isolated area, there was only the vast sea water, nothing else. So the ship was on the mid of the sea, and in such an isolated place, when the albatross came to their ship, they thought that this albatross is a guest for them, and they entertain the albatross as a holy guest, and they provide food and drink for the albatross. But suddenly they notice that the weather is becoming rough, and the ship cannot proceed smoothly. And some of the sailors, they thought that maybe the albatross is the cause of this unhappy weather, this unhappy situation. And it is just the opinion of some of the sailors, but they are not discussing about this type of issues. And in such a situation, suddenly, without any deep thinking, whimsically, the ancient mariner shot the albatross with his crossbow. And actually, in that point, when the ancient mariner shot the albatross, he was not well aware about the reason why did he shoot the albatross. It was just an whimsical action. He just whimsically shot the albatross. So after shooting the albatross, instantly the albatross dies, and the weather again become very much hilarious. It becomes congenial. The sun comes out, penetrating the fog, and the gentle breeze was blowing. So again, their ship was proceeding forward smoothly, and all the mariners, they also became very much happy, and none of them tell anything to the ancient mariner about killing of the albatross. None of them protested the ancient mariner when he shot the albatross. None of them tried to protest him or tried to stop him from shooting the albatross. And even after shooting the albatross, when it dies, none of the sailors were interested to talk about this topic of the killing of the albatross. So when the weather became, that means all of them were indifferent about killing the albatross. So after the death of the albatross, suddenly the weather became very congenial. They could move forward. The ship could proceed smoothly, and all of the sailors were very much happy. They were not bothered about the death of the albatross. But after some moment, again the weather dropped down. The weather became much more rough. The weather gradually deteriorated. The condition of the weather gradually deteriorated, and it became worse and worse. And finally, ultimately, it became the worst. And the situation was that there was the burning sun just on the top of their head. There was not a piece of cloud in the sky to give them the shelter, to give them the shadow from the heating sun. And there were the suffocation, complete suffocation was there. The wind was totally dropped down. There was no movement of the wind. So it was just a total suffocating situation. Even they couldn't take their easy breathing. And the condition of the ship was just like a painted ship upon a painted ocean. That means it stands still without the movement of a single inch. The ship stand static on the same position for day after day. They couldn't go forward even for a single inch. They were static on the same position. There was no movement of wind. There was the heating sun just on the top of their head. So, under the burning sun, they were in a totally intolerable situation. They were just like the what should I say? Just like in a hellish situation. And they were on the same point for several days. And in such a situation, they have already finished their drinking water and also the stock of their food. So after certain days, the situation was that all of their food and drinking water was completely finished. And now they don't have any food to eat. They don't have any drinking water to drink. And in addition to that, there was the burning sun just on the top of their head, and it was always burning them, and the wind was totally stopped down. There was no movement of the wind, so the situation was just like that. They couldn't take their breathing, and they also felt that their tongues were so dry, that their tongues became so dry that even they cannot utter the words with the movement of their tongue. They couldn't move their tongue because it has ultimately become dry. It had become dried up. It dried up to the root. That's why they couldn't even talk to each other, and they felt that their lung has become uh, covered with the soot, so that they cannot take the breathing. The easy movement of their breathing has been stopped, and their situation was beyond description. That is the intolerable situation, the total horrible situation of the mariners. It was just beyond the description. The ancient mariner, he said that their condition was as as horrible as it could be, as worse as it could be. So it was just the worst situation. They were thirsty, they were hungry, and they were burned under the burning sun, and they couldn't take their breathing. So this was just the intolerable situation of all the mariners on that silent sea, on that isolated place, on that remote place. And the ironical situation, the situation of the ancient mariner along with the rest of the sailors is described in the way that water, water everywhere, but they don't have a single drop to drink. This description, these two lines can make us aware about the horrible situation of the mariners, because they were floating on the vast sea water. Even that, the irony of fate is that though they were floating on the vast sea water, even then they couldn't get a single drop to quench their intolerable thirst, to quench their acute thirst. They couldn't drink a single drop of water, though they were floating on the vast sea water, because the sea water is salty and it cannot be drunk. And in such a situation, the rest of the sailors, they considered that this ancient mariner is responsible for all the sufferings of these sailors, because in such a point, in this present point, the rest of the sailors, they thought that this is just for the consequence of the killing of the innocent albatross. As the ancient mariner had killed the innocent albatross without any cause, without any reason, that's why God has given them the punishment. This is the natural punishment that they are now facing. And this punishment is just for killing the innocent bird. And they thought the ancient mariner responsible for all this type of suffering. That's why the rest of the sailors, they gave a punishment to the ancient mariner, and the punishment is that they hang the dead albatross round the neck of the ancient mariner in the place of the holy cross. You know, Christian people, they usually wear a cross, a symbol cross in around their neck. This is a religious symbol of the Christian people, and in the place of that holy cross, they took it away from the neck of the around the neck of the ancient mariner, and in the place of that holy cross, they hung the dead albatross round the neck of the ancient mariner as a symbol of his punishment. And after that, the condition of the ancient mariner was much more horrible. That is, for all the time, he had to wear this dead body of the albatross round his neck, and in addition to that, he had to face the evil look of from all of the sailors, the from the boy up to the aged the person. All of them had a curse. All of the sailors had a curse, acute curse in their mind for the ancient mariner, and that was really painful. That was uh, unbearable for the ancient mariner, the curse in everybody's eyes for him. After that, when their situation was in the last worst condition, in such a point, some mariners, along with the ancient mariner, they noticed something that is coming towards their ship, and gradually they could detect that the symbol or